Maya Rodriguez had exactly 17 minutes left on her shift at SpaceMart when the universe decided to mess with her Tuesday. She was restocking the freeze-dried ice cream display, wondering why anyone would voluntarily eat something that tasted like cardboard in disappointment, when she heard the commotion at checkout 3. Credit declined, announced the register in that annoyingly cheerful voice that all retail technology seemed programmed with. Please try another form of payment. Maya glanced over to see what poor soul was about to experience the special kind of humiliation that only comes from being broke in public. What she saw made her do a double take that nearly sent a box of astronaut strawberries flying. The customer was easily 8 feet tall, covered in what looked like scales that had seen better centuries, and sporting wings that were folded so tightly against his back they looked painful. His face was distinctly dragon-like, complete with small horns and eyes that probably glowed in the dark. But here's the thing that made Maya's heart do a little flip. He looked embarrassed. Not angry, not demanding to speak to a manager, just genuinely mortified. Perhaps there is an error with the machine, he said in a voice that sounded like distant thunder trying to be polite. His accent was unfamiliar, all rolling consonants and careful pronunciation. The teenage cashier, whose name tag read Brad, and whose expression read "I don't get paid enough for aliens," just shrugged. System says what it says, dude. You got cash or another card? Maya watched the old dragon creature pat down what appeared to be a traveling cloak straight out of a medieval festival, clearly coming up empty. His groceries weren't exactly luxury items either. Generic brand protein paste, discount vegetables that had definitely seen better days, and a single container of what the label optimistically called nutrient drink, now with flavor. Without really thinking about it, Maya found herself walking over. Hey Brad, I've got this. Both Brad and the dragon stared at her like she'd just announced her intention to juggle black holes. You don't have to, the dragon said quickly, his voice carrying a weight that seemed too heavy for a grocery store conversation. I can return these items. It's fine, Maya said, already pulling out her debit card and praying her account could handle the $37.82. We've all been there. She paid before anyone could argue, trying not to think about how this meant she'd be eating ramen for the rest of the week. Again. The dragon accepted his bags with the careful dignity of someone who wasn't used to accepting help but was too grateful to refuse it. I am called Grandfather Vex, he said formally. I am in your debt, young human. Maya Rodriguez, and you really don't owe me anything. It's just groceries. Something flickered in those ancient-looking eyes. Just groceries, he repeated, like he was tasting an unfamiliar concept. You have shown kindness to a stranger without expectation of return. This creates what my people call a debt of honor. Maya waved a hand dismissively. Look, Grandfather Vex, I work retail. Being decent to people is literally the least I can do. Don't worry about it. Grandfather Vex studied her for a long moment, then bowed his massive head slightly. I will not forget this, Maya Rodriguez. He left without another word, and Maya went back to restocking freeze-dried desserts, already putting the encounter out of her mind. After all, weird stuff happened at SpaceMart all the time. Last week she'd helped a customer who was clearly some kind of sentient plant find the right fertilizer supplements. Just another Tuesday in the retail trenches. If only she'd known that in about 6 hours her act of basic human decency was going to bring 12 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy directly to her doorstep. 3 hours later, Maya was sprawled on her couch in what could generously be called an apartment but was more accurately described as a closet with delusions of grandeur. She'd changed out of her SpaceMart uniform and into her usual evening attire, pajama pants with holes in them, and a t-shirt that proclaimed xenobiology major, I study aliens so you don't have to. The irony wasn't lost on her. Rough day at the office, honey? Called Jake from the kitchen, which was less a kitchen and more a corner with appliances that had seen better decades. Some dragon-looking dude's credit card got declined and I paid for his groceries, Maya replied, not looking up from her textbook. Standard Tuesday weirdness. Jake poked his head around the corner, holding a cup of what he optimistically called coffee but everyone else called brown liquid of questionable origin. You paid for someone else's groceries. Maya, we're eating ramen for the 4th night in a row. I know, but you should have seen him, Jake. He looked like someone had told him his entire family was disappointed in him. I couldn't just stand there. Your bleeding heart is going to be the death of us both, Jake said, but he was smiling. What's the damage to our already tragic financial situation? $37.82. Jake winced dramatically. Ouch. There goes our dreams of name-brand pasta sauce this month. Maya flipped through her xenobiology textbook, trying to focus on a chapter about interspecies communication protocols. The material should have been fascinating, but it was hard to get excited about theoretical alien contact when you could barely afford the textbook that taught you about it. You know what's funny, she said, highlighting a passage about honor-based cultures. I'm studying alien psychology and social structures, but I'm probably never going to actually meet any aliens who aren't just passing through the grocery store. Hey, at least you met one today, Jake pointed out. That's more alien contact than most xenobiology majors get. Maya snorted. Right, one elderly dragon buying discount protein paste. I'm basically the next great interstellar diplomat. She closed the textbook and rubbed her eyes. Tomorrow she had classes, then another shift at SpaceMart, then probably several hours of studying while eating ramen and wondering if her degree was worth the student loans that were going to follow her to her grave. Just another exciting evening in the life of Maya Rodriguez, future xenobiologist and current retail employee extraordinaire. She had no idea that 3 hours from now, her definition of exciting evening was about to get a serious upgrade. Maya was 3 pages into a particularly boring chapter on diplomatic protocols in non-humanoid cultures, when her apartment building started shaking. Not earthquake shaking, more like giant invisible hand picking up the building and giving it a gentle but firm shake kind of shaking. What the hell, she muttered, looking up from her textbook just as every car alarm in a 6-block radius started going off simultaneously. Jake appeared in the living room doorway, his face pressed against his phone screen. Maya, you need to see this. Like right now. She looked at his phone and felt her stomach drop somewhere around her ankles. The news was showing aerial footage of 12 massive ships hovering over the city. Not little ships. Not wow, that's a big airplane. Ships. These were full-on Independence Day except somehow more terrifying. Ships that looked like someone had taken a cathedral, made it out of metal that seemed to absorb light, and then taught it how to fly. Okay, Maya said slowly. So either aliens have finally made official contact with Earth, or someone's really committed to a very expensive prank. Maya, Jake said, his voice getting that particular tone that meant he was about to say something she wouldn't like. Look at where they're positioned. She looked at the aerial shot again. The ships weren't spread out over the city. They weren't hovering over government buildings or military installations or anything that would make sense for an invasion. They were arranged in a perfect circle, and right in the center of that circle was a very familiar apartment building. Her apartment building. No, Maya said flatly. Absolutely not. There is no way this has anything to do with me. Maya, there are 12 alien warships directly above our building. Coincidence, they're not responding to any attempts at communication from the military. Maybe they don't speak English. Every news channel is calling this the most significant event in human history. The news channels are being dramatic. The building shook again, more gently this time, and Maya could swear she heard something that sounded like landing gear deploying. She walked to the window and looked up to see what appeared to be a boarding ramp extending from the bottom of the ship directly overhead. Okay, she said, backing away from the window. Okay, that's definitely not a coincidence. Jake was frantically shoving things into a backpack. We need to get out of here. Now. Before they start probing people, or whatever aliens do. Wait. Maya held up a hand, her mind racing. What if this isn't an invasion? What if it's something else? Maya, 12 alien warships just showed up over our building specifically. In what universe is that not an invasion? She thought about Grandfather Vex, about his formal way of speaking, about that weird comment about debts of honor. Jake, remember what I told you about the dragon guy at the store? The one whose groceries you paid for. Yeah, he said something about a debt of honor. What if aliens take that stuff really seriously? Jake stared at her. You think 12 warships showed up because you bought someone groceries? I think I'm about to find out. Outside she could hear people shouting, cars starting, sirens in the distance. Their neighbors were clearly taking the run for your lives approach to first contact. Maya couldn't blame them. She was seriously considering joining them when a sound filled the apartment that made her teeth ache. It was like someone had taken the concept of authoritative announcement and translated it into pure audio. When it stopped, a voice spoke in perfect unaccented English. Maya Rodriguez of apartment 3B. We require your immediate presence for a matter of galactic importance. Maya and Jake looked at each other. Galactic importance, Jake repeated weakly. Yeah, Maya said, I'm starting to think I should have minded my own business at the grocery store. What happened next was going to haunt Maya's dreams for the rest of her life, assuming she lived long enough to have dreams again. The air in the middle of her living room started to shimmer, like heat waves rising off summer pavement, except the shimmer was blue and making a sound like wind chimes having an argument. Maya grabbed Jake's arm and pulled him behind the couch, because when weird alien technology starts materializing in your apartment, hiding behind furniture seems like the only reasonable response. The shimmer solidified into a holographic projection of what was clearly an alien, but not like Grandfather Vex. This one was humanoid, but taller, with skin that looked like it was made of polished obsidian and eyes that were definitely not designed for looking at things the way human eyes were. She was wearing what appeared to be a military uniform that probably cost more than Maya's entire education. Maya Rodriguez, the projection said, and her voice carried the kind of authority that made Maya want to stand up straight and apologize for things she hadn't even done yet. I am Commander Zara of the Draconian Battle Fleet. We need to talk. Maya peeked over the couch. Hi, can I just say that your timing is really inconvenient? I have a xenobiology exam tomorrow, and I haven't studied nearly enough. Commander Zara's expression didn't change, but Maya got the distinct impression she was being evaluated by someone who could probably disintegrate her with a thought. You are the human who provided assistance to Grandfather Vex, approximately 6 hours ago. I paid for his groceries, yes. Look, if this is about the money, I can pay him back. I mean, it'll take me a while, because I work retail, but I'm good for it. The monetary value is irrelevant. Commander Zara said, do you understand who Grandfather Vex is? An elderly dragon person who shops at Space Mart. Commander Zara was quiet for a long moment. Grandfather Vex is the former supreme warlord of the Draconian Empire. He has conquered 47 star systems. His name is whispered in fear across 3 galaxies. He once ended a war by showing up to a peace negotiation and simply existing in the same room as the opposing generals. Maya blinked. He bought protein paste and discount vegetables. He is currently in voluntary exile as penance for what he considers the excessive casualties of his final campaign. He has stripped himself of wealth and status, living as what you humans would call a hermit. Okay, but he still bought groceries. Maya Rodriguez, Commander Zara said, and Maya could hear the patience wearing thin. In Draconian culture, when someone of Grandfather Vex's status is shown kindness by a stranger, it creates a debt of honor that can only be repaid through absolute loyalty. You have, through your actions, become the person to whom the most feared military strategist in known space owes his life. Maya felt Jake's hand tighten on her arm. She looked at Commander Zara, then at Jake, then back at Commander Zara. I'm sorry, what now? Upon learning of your act of generosity, Grandfather Vex contacted the Draconian High Command. He has declared you his chosen successor and demanded that the entire battle fleet acknowledge your authority. My authority over what exactly? Everything. Maya stood up slowly, her legs feeling like they were made of jelly. Commander Zara, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't want authority over anything. I can barely manage my own life. I ate cereal for dinner last night because I forgot to buy actual food. The fleet is prepared to pledge their loyalty to you regardless of your personal dietary choices. Can't you just tell Grandfather Vex that I appreciate the gesture, but I'm not really leadership material? I mean, I work at a grocery store. I study aliens for fun. I don't even know how to parallel park. Commander Zara's expression shifted slightly, and Maya realized she was probably the first human this alien had ever met. You refuse the honor. I'm not refusing anything. I'm trying to explain that this is all completely unnecessary. I didn't help Grandfather Vex because I wanted something in return. I helped him because he looked sad and I had $37. $37.82. Commander Zara was quiet for a very long time. You provided assistance to the most powerful being you had ever encountered for the equivalent of $37.82, expecting nothing in return. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds weird. Maya Rodriguez, what you have just described is not how intelligent species behave. Kindness without expectation of reciprocity is either a sign of mental deficiency or a manipulation tactic so sophisticated that it represents a form of psychological warfare. Maya felt a laugh bubbling up in her chest, the kind of laugh that happens when the universe gets so absurd that your brain just gives up trying to process it. Commander Zara, I think you've been hanging around the wrong intelligent species. Explain. Humans help each other. It's just what we do. It's not warfare, it's not manipulation, it's not mental deficiency, it's just being human. Commander Zara stared at her for a long moment. If this is true, then your species possesses a strategic advantage that could reshape galactic politics. Our strategic advantage is being nice to people. Your strategic advantage is being unpredictable in a way that makes traditional military and political calculations useless. Maya rubbed her temples. Commander Zara, I'm getting a headache. Can we maybe figure out how to undo whatever Grandfather Vex did so you can all go home and I can go back to studying for my exam? Maya Rodriguez, there are currently representatives from 16 different galactic governments en route to this location. The Draconian battle fleet showing up in Earth's solar system has been interpreted as either a precursor to invasion or a declaration of a new galactic power. If you refuse to accept leadership of the fleet, it will be seen as a sign of weakness, and Earth will likely be invaded by multiple species simultaneously within the next 48 hours. Maya stared at the holographic alien commander. So my choices are become a galactic warlord or watch my planet get invaded. That is a crude but accurate assessment. Maya looked at Jake, who was still crouched behind the couch with his mouth hanging open. She looked at her xenobiology textbook, still open to the chapter on diplomatic protocols. She looked at Commander Zara, who was waiting for an answer that was going to determine the fate of human civilization. This is so not what I planned for Tuesday night. Maya spent the next 10 minutes pacing back and forth in her tiny living room, while Commander Zara waited with the kind of patience that probably came from having access to weapons that could vaporize solar systems. Jake had moved from behind the couch to the kitchen, where he was stress-eating crackers directly from the box and occasionally making small whimpering sounds. Okay, Maya finally said, stopping in front of the holographic commander. Let's say I accept this absolutely insane situation. What exactly does being in charge of your fleet involve? Because I should mention that my leadership experience is limited to training new cashiers and organizing study groups. The Draconian battle fleet consists of 12 Dreadnought-class warships, each capable of reducing a planet to constituent atoms. You would command approximately 50,000 of the most elite warriors in known space, along with their support staff and auxiliary vessels. And what do they expect me to do with 50,000 elite warriors? Typically conquest and the expansion of territory through military force. Maya rubbed her face. Commander Zara, I'm going to need you to understand something about humans. We're not really into the whole conquering thing. I mean, we used to be, but we've mostly moved past that as a species. Now we're more into things like Netflix and arguing about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. You do not wish to expand your territory. I live in a 400 square foot apartment with a roommate. I'd like to expand that territory, but generally through getting a better job and saving up for a security deposit, not through military conquest. Commander Zara's expression suggested she was processing information that didn't fit into any of her existing frameworks. Then what would you do with the fleet? Maya thought about it. I don't know. What problems does the galaxy have that need solving? The galaxy has many problems. Territorial disputes, resource conflicts, trade wars, species extinction events, pirates, plague outbreaks, natural disasters. See, those are all things that could probably be solved without blowing stuff up. Explain. Maya started pacing again. Okay, like territorial disputes. Instead of fighting over who gets what planet, why not figure out a way for everyone to share resources? Or help species find uninhabited planets that meet their needs. And pirates are usually just people who don't have better options, right? Give them jobs and they'll stop being pirates. You would solve galactic conflicts through resource sharing and job creation. I mean, it works on Earth. Mostly, when we're not being idiots about it. Commander Zara was quiet for a long moment. Maya Rodriguez, you are describing a form of leadership that has never been successfully implemented on a galactic scale. Maybe that's because nobody's tried it with humans before. You believe your species has capabilities that others lack. Maya thought about every customer service interaction she'd ever had. Every time she'd de-escalated a situation just by listening to someone complain. Every group project she'd managed to save by finding ways for incompatible personalities to work together. Commander Zara, humans are really good at dealing with unreasonable people. We've had to be. We're also really good at finding solutions that work for everybody. Because we've spent most of our history learning that the alternative is everyone dying horribly. And you believe these skills would translate to galactic diplomacy. I think it's worth a shot. What's the worst that could happen? Galactic war, resulting in the extinction of multiple species. Okay, fair point. But what's the best that could happen? Commander Zara considered this. Peace. Right. So the potential upside is peace, and the downside is the same thing that happens if I say no, and Earth gets invaded anyway. Jake poked his head out of the kitchen. Maya, are you seriously considering this? Jake, I think I might be the most qualified person on Earth for this job. You work at SpaceMart. Exactly. I deal with difficult customers from multiple species every day. I've mediated disputes between Andromedans and Centaurians over who gets the last package of freeze-dried ice cream. I once talked a very angry Regelian out of filing a complaint about our return policy by explaining the difference between store credit and refunds. Commander Zara's posture changed slightly. You have experience in interspecies conflict resolution. I have experience in retail, which is basically the same thing except with more screaming and the threat of bad reviews instead of planetary annihilation. Maya Rodriguez, I am beginning to understand why Grandfather Vex was impressed by your species. Look, Commander Zara, I'm not saying I'm qualified to be a galactic leader. I'm saying that maybe the galaxy needs a different kind of leadership. Maybe instead of having the most feared military strategist in known space, you need someone who knows how to apologize for things that aren't her fault and find solutions that make everyone equally unhappy. You would accept leadership of the Draconian battle fleet with the intention of using it for diplomatic purposes. I would accept leadership of the fleet with the intention of figuring out what the hell I'm doing as I go along, but yeah, diplomacy sounds way better than conquest. Commander Zara nodded slowly. Very well. Maya Rodriguez, by accepting leadership of the Draconian battle fleet, you become the youngest military commander in galactic history, the first human to hold a position of interstellar authority, and the first leader to explicitly state that your primary weapon will be customer service skills. When you put it like that, it sounds even crazier than it already did. The representatives from the 16 galactic governments will arrive within the next 4 hours. They will expect to negotiate with you directly. Maya looked around her tiny apartment, at her xenobiology textbook, at Jake, who was now sitting on the kitchen floor eating crackers and looking like he was having an existential crisis. Commander Zara, I'm going to need you to explain something to these representatives. I'm willing to do this, but I'm going to do it my way. That means no one gets conquered, no one gets threatened, and everyone gets treated with basic respect, even if they're being complete jerks about it. And if they refuse to negotiate under those terms. Maya grinned, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she felt like maybe she knew what she was doing. Then I'll do what I do with every difficult customer. I'll smile, I'll be polite, and I'll make it very clear that their behavior is unacceptable while offering them a reasonable alternative that meets their actual needs. You intend to treat galactic representatives like difficult customers. Commander Zara, in my experience that's exactly what they are. 6 months later, Maya was sitting in what used to be the community center of her apartment complex, and was now the unofficial headquarters of the first human-led galactic peacekeeping force. The building had been extensively renovated to accommodate beings of various sizes and atmospheric requirements, though Maya had insisted they keep the vending machine because, as she explained to the Galactic Council, some things are sacred. She was currently mediating a dispute between the crystalline hegemony and the gas giant collective over mining rights in the Proxima sector, and honestly, it wasn't that different from the time she'd had to sort out a conflict between two regular customers who both wanted the same parking spot at SpaceMart. Okay, let me see if I understand this correctly, Maya said, looking between the two representatives. The crystalline delegate looked like a living geode having a bad hair day, while the gas giant representative was essentially a sentient cloud wearing what appeared to be a very formal hat. You both need the asteroid belt for resources, but you're fighting over who gets exclusive access. The crystalline hegemony has superior claim, declared the geode, whose name was something Maya couldn't pronounce, so she'd started thinking of him as Rocky. We were there first. The gas giant collective has greater need, whispered the cloud, who Maya had mentally dubbed Nimbus. Our consumption requires constant resource acquisition. Maya nodded and made notes on her tablet, which was now the most advanced piece of technology in human space thanks to some helpful upgrades from her new alien friends. Right, so this is basically the same problem I had when Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Patel both wanted to use the employee parking spot. The solution is time sharing. Both representatives stared at her. Well, Rocky stared. Nimbus sort of swirled disapprovingly. You split the mining time, Maya continued. Crystalline hegemony gets the belt Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Gas giant collective gets Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Sundays are for maintenance and anyone who needs emergency resources. You both get what you need, nobody has to fight about it, and I don't have to listen to you argue for the next 6 hours. This is acceptable, Rocky admitted grudgingly. The gas giant collective finds these terms agreeable, Nimbus whispered. Great. Commander Zara will send you the official paperwork. Next. The next case was a trade dispute between the Fullen Empire and the Canine Republic, which was exactly as ridiculous as it sounded. Maya had solved it by suggesting they establish neutral trading posts run by species that were neither cats nor dogs, specifically the Avian Federation, who were happy to take a small percentage in exchange for handling the logistics. After that came a complaint from the Aquatic Alliance about the Terrestrial Union dumping waste in shared water systems, which Maya handled by implementing the galactic equivalent of a neighborhood watch program with mandatory cleanup duties. By the time her official office hours ended, Maya had prevented 3 wars, established 2 new trade agreements, and organized what was basically a galaxy-wide recycling program. It was, she reflected, not that different from managing a really complicated group project, except with higher stakes and more tentacles. Jake knocked on her office door, carrying 2 cups of coffee, and wearing a shirt that read "My roommate commands a space fleet and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." "How was your day, Supreme Commander of Everything?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Please don't call me that." And it was fine. Prevented the usual number of catastrophic interstellar incidents, negotiated a peace treaty between 2 species who've been fighting for 3 centuries, and managed to talk the hive mind out of assimilating a solar system by explaining the concept of consent. "You know, Maya, when you put it like that it sounds almost routine." Maya laughed. "That's the weird part. It kind of is routine now. Turns out that most galactic conflicts are just people being unreasonable about sharing stuff, and I've been dealing with that my entire retail career. Speaking of which, did you ever finish that xenobiology degree?" "I got credit for field experience," Maya said with a grin. "Apparently mediating disputes between actual aliens counts as practical application of xenocultural studies. Who knew?" There was a soft chime from Maya's communication device, which meant someone needed her attention. She looked at the display and sighed. "What now?" Jake asked. "The Robotic Consortium and the Organic Alliance are having another philosophical disagreement about the nature of consciousness. Last time this happened, they spent 6 months not talking to each other, and it screwed up supply chains in 4 sectors. Can't Commander Zara handle it?" "Commander Zara handles it by offering to blow things up until everyone agrees to get along. My approach involves less potential for planetary annihilation." Maya stood up and grabbed her jacket, which was now a specially designed diplomatic coat that could interface with 17 different types of alien technology while still looking professional. "The good news is, I think I can solve this one with the same technique I used to get the Philosophy Club and the Engineering Club to stop arguing about whether artificial intelligence counted as real intelligence. Which was, I made them work together on a project. Nothing resolves ideological differences like having to collaborate on something practical." As they walked toward the conference room, where 2 entire galactic civilizations were probably having an existential crisis at each other, Maya reflected on how much her life had changed. She still lived in the same apartment, though it now had a view of 12 permanent alien warships that served as her personal security detail. She still worked with difficult customers, though now they were representatives of galactic governments instead of people who wanted to return expired yogurt. The biggest difference was that now, when she came home at the end of the day, she could honestly say she'd made the galaxy a slightly better place. Also, her student loans had been paid off by the draconian battle fleet's financial department, which had been very confused by the concept of educational debt but had handled it with typical military efficiency. "You know what the funny thing is?" Maya said as they reached the conference room, where she could already hear the sounds of 2 civilizations having a very polite but very heated philosophical argument. "What's that?" 6 months ago, I was worried about whether I'd ever get to use my xenobiology degree. Now I'm pretty sure I'm the most successful xenobiologist in human history. And it all started because you bought groceries for a sad dragon. It all started because I was a decent human being to someone who needed help. The rest of it just followed naturally. Maya opened the door to the conference room, where representatives of the Robotic Consortium and the Organic Alliance immediately stopped arguing, and turned to look at her with expressions of hope and relief. She took a deep breath, put on her best customer service smile and prepared to save the galaxy one reasonable compromise at a time. "Good evening, everyone. I understand we're having some philosophical differences about consciousness and artificial intelligence. Before we get started, can I offer anyone coffee? I find that most problems are easier to solve when everyone's properly caffeinated." And as the representatives of 2 galactic civilizations accepted her offer of coffee and began to settle in for what would undoubtedly be a long but productive conversation, Maya Rodriguez realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness really do have the biggest consequences. Even if those consequences involve becoming the most unlikely galactic peace negotiator in the history of the universe. At least it beat working retail. Most of the time.